come back to us?
When we authorize execution to the satisfaction of the town attorney.
You got all that?
Mr. Green's amended motion stands. It's been seconded by Mr. Scott, and that will authorize the town attorney to make the changes and just as information, we'll have it on our February agenda so we can know everything was in order.
Yeah, we'll bring it back to you, but she's gonna have authorization to move
Proceed.
forward and execute, but we will bring you the final.
If this motion carries, she will be allowed to proceed. I'll ask for a roll call vote, starting with Mr. Tucker. Motion carries 6-0.
I asked for an email, let's execute the contract, okay?
If we can know as soon as council members.
I want you to email me the corrected contract, okay?
All right. Thank you very much for your interest in Blackstone. This is good news for a lot of folks.
Well, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you
you.
so much. Next, we have good news regarding the Old Town Shop. The sale is complete. The town manager wants to use the sale proceeds of $70,000 to move cardboard recycling to a location behind the fuel pumps, to build bays and storage behind the fuel pumps on Church Street, and to remove the tar tanks at the intersection of Amelia Avenue and 2nd Street. Any questions?
I move to approve the request. I'm well versed at what he wants, if y'all have any questions.
Second, it definitely needs to be done, especially with the tar tanks.
I asked it once, but I'll ask the question again. Is this $70,000 a sufficient amount to do what you say?
It's my expectation, here's the deal, we prioritize these activities. Priority number one is build the base. We've lost the town shop, so we gotta put that stuff somewhere. Ms. Bunn is right, we're probably not the most conscientious all the time by getting the grass cut and putting stuff away. So there'll be 6 additional bays that'll run out, and then we'll have a structure over top of the cardboard recycling and any future recycling program that may be offered. That would be item number one. Dan is going to handle the majority of the construction. The only thing we won't do is probably pour the pad. We'll have to bid that out, but they'll do the structural work and put the roof on it. And I think the guys can handle it with the bucket trucks and such things. Obviously, the recycling will be number 2. He's going to have to buy some transformers in order for us to put 3-phase power down there because there is no 3-phase at this time. And then the difference will have to be the tar tanks, and that will just be dictated. At this time, I'm not asking to exceed 70, but if the tar pots come back higher, and I've bid them out one time. If you remember, in 2015, we bid them out. They came at $36,000, and I said we just don't have the money to do it. So if we can get in a little lower, then hopefully the 70 will do it. If it is not, I'll hold off on the tar pots and come back to you guys and say, do you have some other funds you'd like to put toward it?
All right, very good.
Plus, how about the water meter? When will that be moved?
Inside the town shop? I don't know the exact date. We were supposed to have the building swept clean on last Friday, and between snow and extra garbage collections and that sort of thing, we're about 95%. If you go down there, it's pretty good. These guys have really been on it the past few days. A lot of old plumbing fittings still sitting there. David McCormick and I have talked. He's like, just deliver the building, give me a key, and work on the other things as quick as, and specifically recycling and the water requirement.
The electrical building?
I believe that'll be the case, yeah.
Motion has been made and seconded to,
I don't have a date. I don't know the exact, but David McCormick's not flipping out, trying to eject us from it.
the motion has been made and seconded to authorize the town manager to undertake the activities using the $70,000 and hopefully using as less of it as possible, which he understands. I'd ask for a roll call vote, starting with Mr. Tucker. Motion carries 6-0. Unfinished business number 5 is the Police Department Law Enforcement Officer Supplement Plan. Mr. Michael Bagley.
I got a question. What was the final sale price of that building? 78,000 or 75,000?
It was 75.
And we had to pay about $5,000 in commission, and the net proceeds, the check was $70,000 and some change. So 75 was the gross, about $5,000 in commission, and we received a check for $78,000 and
So the check-
almost right at
We're talking about
$70,000.
$70,000, yes, sir.
But initially, I thought I read in the paper and heard in here it was 78,000. So how we dropped from 75 to 70 now?
I don't.
We didn't.
78 didn't ring a bell. 75 certainly rings a bell. The 78, I do not recall seeing or hearing that
But I will say our previous buyer was $100,000. If you remember,
for the apartments.
we had a contract for $100,000 with another buyer, and they moved forward. We took the tanks out of the ground. We did a lot of work over there, environmental studies, all that sort of thing, and then they bailed out. As their contract allowed them to, they chose not to do it. We have a second buyer. His offer was $75,000 to put the tasting room, restaurant, and
Brewery, we have a brewery.
but it wasn't 78. His offer was $75,000.
Breweries,
He's always have a microbrewery here.
You want to do this, Jen?
Did the motion pass?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
6-0.
Next, thank you, Mr. Bagley. We appreciate you staying and keeping us on our toes. Yes, sir. Next up, we have an issue that's been approved by the council previously. This is the Police Department LEOS, or Law Enforcement Officer Supplement. We have Jennifer Hardy, who's going to brief us on that.
I think more than anything, we're here to answer questions, and Jennifer is well-versed on the matter. This is a resolution that's been requested to be provided. I think the motion has been made one time before, and we need to establish as best possible an effective date. Now, I think the last time we said as soon as possible.
I move that we approve this resolution and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign and go forward.
And you need to make it effective at the beginning of a month, so you wanna make it effective February 1, or as soon as, she's gotta do some finagling, but I need to do payroll.
Can we go retro to January 1st? Or is that, oh, you got to go in the future, February 1st. I just knew we'd, all right, you want to go February 1st?
Motion will include whatever date is needed.
Push you February.
Okay, I'll just make the motion to whatever, they can apply the date as needed.
Either February 1st or March 1st, as soon as possible.
That's correct.
There's a second to Mr. Green's motion. Mr. McCure has seconded, and this is something, folks, that was projected to cost $70,000, but we're doing it in mid-year, so we've got enough funds in the budget to cover the first part. This is an extra retirement perk for the officers. The officers said they wanted this perk instead of maybe pay raises next budget or this budget year, and so this is a recruitment and retention tool that the council views as imperative. I'll ask for a roll call vote, starting with Mr. Tucker. Motion carries 5-0 with one abstention. Next up, I can give a little bit of report on the Armory referendum. There was some talk in these chambers for many months. Mr. Nash had the great idea, and it came to me. At first, I told Mr. Nash, you can't do a referendum in Virginia because we're a Dillon Rule state, and the General Assembly doesn't allow you to have referendums. But then I realized you could possibly do a charter change, which requires General Assembly approval, which we have missed the deadline for this year. So I guess the answer, council needs to be thinking about if it does wish to have an advisory referendum in the future, which would be next year. They have to ask the General Assembly to approve our charter change. We have to have a public hearing here for 2 weeks, be advertised for 2 weeks. This is just an update basically on the fact that we cannot have an Army referendum anytime until the earliest would be the year 2019. But I guess, the council would, you can decide to keep that in the back of your head, and as we grapple with the Armory.
Do you have to specify in
Yes.
your charter change what it's actually for?
It's really crazy. You've got to amend your charter, which usually is a charter amendment normally covers the future and things that are going to be recurring. You have to have language in your charter saying the town of Blackstone is allowed to have a referendum on the renovation of the Harris Memorial Armory.
That is correct, Neil. I did include, and that was my legal advice, but when I was just looking at different charters, I did notice it was either the city of Charlottesville charter or the county of Albemarle charter, where it did allow for a more general, because that was one of the questions that was asked to me is, well, can you do, just general advisory referendums? And my advice was, no, because of the way that the statute's read. But I did find that one, and there was only one that I found, where the charter did allow for just general advisory referendums.
That might be the way for us to go.
Yeah, so I don't know if the General Assembly will approve it, and I don't know if the reason why perhaps this was allowed was perhaps this was before the law changed,
Right.
But, so what I do have here, actually 2 different suggested charter amendments. And one thing that I would like to change is, it says corporation court on here.
Yes.
And we need to change corporation to circuit court.
Is that the first paragraph or the second one?
The first one and the second one.
Oh, the corporation, you want to change corporation to circuit.
That's correct. Everywhere where it says corporation, I want to change to circuit, just to clarify.
One thing council's got to think about, whatever you decide on the Armory, if you did decide to go the route of referendum, the last time this community had a referendum was 1982. It was a binding referendum. The laws were different then. It was on dog confinement. And that was before Blackstone had court-ordered wards. One thing you do not want to do is have a referendum in Blackstone on a Blackstone issue in a November election, because then you'd have, for example, those of us who live in Ward C, which right now is Mr. Green, myself, Mr. McCure, we would have to go vote in the referendum at the rescue squad building, and then to participate in the general election, we would have to go to the police station, which would create mass confusion in Blackstone. So the ideal time to have a referendum would be in concert with a town election, or you could have it like, you could just have a special election in August or July, which the town would have to foot the bill, because it would be about $5,000 to hold an election. And again, that's if the council decides to have an advisory referendum on the Armory, which this council and this mayor have discussed going back to 2000. Mr. Lehman Mitchell, briefly, yes.
You said, I thought I heard you say at first you couldn't have a referendum.
When Mr. Nash first had the idea, he said, maybe we ought to have a referendum. And I said, well, that's a great idea, but because we're a Dillon Rule state, local governments can only do those things specifically stated by the General Assembly. But then I remembered months later, advisory referendum. We could have an advisory referendum. And that's when Town Attorney Bacon advised us correctly that you can do that, but you got to get your delegate. And usually these things pass the General Assembly easy. Tommy Wright puts a bill in there affecting Blackstone. No one from Botetourt County or wherever is going to get up and fight a local charter change. But it's not without, it requires some effort, and you know, some might argue that the Armory's been beat to death as it is, but I just wanted the council to have all the facts so the council can make the.
I like the first one because it doesn't bind us to one particular, I mean, because you never know in the future what we may want to hear what our citizens say without having to have them come to the podium.
It might be, does the town of Black, it might be an advisory referendum on expanding the police station up to $1 million or whatever. I like the flexibility.
Chesterfield gets them all the time. You see them on there running on the bottom of the all the time. Referendum number one.
Right.
Two, I just would like to have the ability to do that, to hear our citizens instead of making them, some people, like Mr. Green has said himself, a lot of people don't like to come up and talk to that microphone.
That's correct.
I don't like coming and talking to that microphone. Correct.
And the thing about a referendum, you know, people have asked us too, well, Billy, what's the magic number? I was like, look, I'll tell you right now. If you have a special referendum on the Armory, let's just say it's in the middle of the year, or let's even say it's, if we could even do it this council election. If you didn't have 30% of the people voting on that issue, that's bad news for the Armory. If this community, to me, the threshold needs to be high to spend, and I'm an Army supporter, but to spend $2 to $2.5 million, I think this council would be looking for numbers of 65 to 70% of voter turnout and a strong majority saying yes, renovate it. When people don't come to vote, it means they don't care. And I think there's fatigue, and it saddens me to say I believe there is great fatigue on the issue itself, and then there's also doubt about spending that much money. I'm still in the minority. I believe it can be done, it should be done, but again, council makes those things. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Miller.
So you're saying that if it was to go and it came up and 20% came out and only 20% came out, then what you're saying is not worthwhile dealing with.
What I'm saying, let's say we have voter turnout 25 or 30%,
Right.
and the results are 75% say renovated. I would tell you, in my opinion, that's not a mandate or the will of the people. If we have 65 or 70% turnout, and it's 60-40 or 70-30 to renovate it, I'd say council then may say, you know, the people may want this thing done. But sadly, I don't believe right now if you had the referendum tomorrow, I don't believe you'd have more than 25% of the people in Blackstone voting, and I think it'd be close then, or it may be defeated in the advisory referendum.
When do you anticipate the earliest we could get it on a referendum?
My personal opinion, I'd like to see the advisory referendum had. It would pass the General Assembly in a short session next year. It'd be signed into law July 1st of 2019. And I would do it around August, September of 2019, because you don't want to do it in conjunction with the November election. It's just too many moving parts.
So you're saying the town just foot the bill and have a special?
$5,000. I think a lot of us, we all go to cocktail parties and we all talk among our friends. The people don't want it or the people want it. For $5,000 with a town with a $13 million budget, I'd love to have the poll and put it to rest.
So I guess my question is, does it need to be tabled until a specific date to bring it back up in front of the council? Or how do we move forward if you
Or
want
does
to
she
do it?
start now, getting it
Or do we
ready?
tell her to go do it now?
I would like to have the town attorney prepare option one, which is a very general, allowing this town flexibility from time to time in its charter to hold advisory referendums. Have have your gunpowder ready for the next session of General Assembly next year. This council, next mayor, this mayor, get Delegate Wright and Senator Ruff engaged. It should whip through the 45-day session easily. Probably would not take long till the governor signed it July 1st. Pretty sure that's correct. And then the next council could decide, hey, let's do that referendum in mid-September or August.
I personally don't see the harm in having the flexibility to do it. So I move that we proceed with getting General Assembly approval to amend our charter.
All right,
Second.
Mr. Nash, you second that motion.
Yeah, the first step is having the public hearing, and so the first step would be, authorizing me to draft the public hearing notice.
With all due respect, I really don't care about all what you have to get done. I'm trying to give you the authority to do it.
Right.
So,
And it might be best to say maybe have this hearing as maybe not now, because then I would say maybe toward the fall, maybe toward September, October, because then we'll be getting ready to turn the page into the General Assembly session. Real quick, Mr. Miller.
But, okay, what I'm saying is, there's gotta be a public hearing before anything happens, right?
That's correct. What we're doing is authorizing the town manager to get the wording correct, and then this council would vote to have a public hearing, advertise that public hearing, and then act on the results of the public hearing. All in favor of Mr. Green's motion, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank y'all very much. Ongoing projects, I don't see a lot, other than we have a demolition of 214 Maven.
I bring this to you for the specific purpose that Tessie and I and Jennifer Daniel attended court on December 11th. We received an order from the judge to demolish the home at 214 Maven Avenue. We did come to agreement with Mr. Allen that he had certain benchmarks that he could meet to avoid demolition. If you're not familiar with the house, it's pretty tough looking over on Maven Avenue. We've been working on it for a while. The judge did give us the order. We gave him 30 days to bring the house into compliance, that it would no longer, I believe, be a dilapidated or dangerous structure. He has not met that deadline. January 11th has come and passed, so we'll be moving the Traco. I do need to finish up the asbestos testing for the disposal. I received bids from one contractor Friday on it, and I'm waiting on bids from a second contractor. And as soon as that can happen, we'll do the asbestos testing and do the abatement and demolish the home.
Probably will never see.
Put a lien on it? Is that what you put a lien?
We'll put a lien on the property, and we'll try to prevent the loss of any of that money. But oftentimes, as you know, it happens.
Yes.
Do you need any action from us?
No, that's informational. Moving on to meals tax. Madam Treasurer, I see in our packet we have 2 outstanding meals tax. Is that still the case?
No, this whole house.
Why is it every month it happens that is the same establishment, I guess?
They're paying the penalties, though.
And they're paying penalties though. Okay, very good, very good. Nothing on street improvements, Church Street project, final compliance review.
To my knowledge, I'd like to publicly thank Yvonne and Jennifer Hardy, and it is my belief that DHCD is very satisfied with the financials and the administrative side of things. The review went well, and we are done with construction. There may be some checks that remain to be paid to certain contractors, but as far as we're concerned, I believe that Church Street is a completed project.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Thank everybody for your help on that. Item number 5, and I was with the town manager last Thursday night, the school board did approve the relocation of the playground equipment. And Mr. Norbeck did a very good job, very good presentation. I have been contacted by some Recreation Association people who, A, say they were not contacted, but B, more importantly, without getting to the he said, she said, they are concerned about the proximity, the closeness of where this will be placed to Harris Street and worried about the traffic. And so I just want to bring that, I'm not advocating either way. This council has decided the location, but I was confronted pleasantly, very pleasantly.
It's been in the master plan for that location for years.
It has.
We had it actually a few months ago. I suggested it be on the opposite side behind the bigger boys' ball field. And the rec suggested it be moved. So we moved it.
Okay. Did the Rex suggest this location?
This, I think, actually, this suggestion came from our TAP 21 application, and that showed a playground and a pavilion of sorts, a ticket collection for the improvements that we're getting ready to make. And that playground was cited or shown, not for any prejudice, but just because they were looking for something to do. The movement of the playground came up as an issue, and logically we said, hey, this is what's going on.
I just wanted you all to be aware. I'm not advocating.
This ship has sailed.
Okay.
We've gone through the process and we've got the approval and we voted on it. I believe it was 7-0.
It was October.
We've got great equipment sitting in storage. We need to go into.
We have some equipment sitting in store.
As you're walking into the entrance of the ball field, let's say it's, in your mind it's June, you're going in to see a baseball game. Just to the left, where currently there's some handicap parking.
On the exterior of the facility.
But you don't have to be in the ballpark to play in the playground. You can access it, there'll be an access from the ballpark, but you can also not go in the ballpark and go in the play.
Right there where the handicap park.
That's right.
Handicap will be moved to the opposite side.
Right, okay.
And the playground will be on the left side.
And we did make some commitments on behalf of the council, the mayor and I were there, a 6-foot fence, which logically you don't want the kid jumping out in the street. So there'll be a 6-foot fence around it, and Jackie Hawks had a question, would there be that black fabric screen put up, and she wanted to make sure that people could see the children, or the kids could see out, vice versa, and I agreed that we would not put that up there, so.
Well,
She was just concerned.
She had seen mesh fencing around the ballpark, so she
Yeah.
just want to make sure.
I think those are the only two things that were brought up after the fact. So we discussed a 4-foot fence, which was currently around the playground, but I made and the mayor's and Yvonne joined us for that one, and we all agreed a 6-foot fence would be more
I
appropriate.
just want to bring that to your attention, that's all. I'm not advocating. I appreciate the work y'all
When do we
doing.
look at, since we have some citizens that have raised comments, when do we look at it being done?
Hold on. Mr. Norbeck, Mr. Nash wants to know, when might you expect the playground installation to begin?
I would say all of it will be coincide with the construction on the curb and gutter and all those kinds of things. One of the things, yeah, I'd say late summer. We're going to stay on the baseball season, so it'll be late summer. This is a federally funded project, so if you know how the wheels turn on a federally funded project, they're a little slow. Curb and gutter and sidewalk's pretty easy, but this is probably going to be a little slow. But I would say, in addition, this would be a logical time for us to look at traffic calming devices as part of our project. And I can't say speed bump because I don't think they'd allow speed bumps, but they did have some things that we showed you for college. And I think to allay some of the concern from the Rec Association, maybe Harris Street, I don't know if there's a better or more logical place for traffic calming to
Excellent place. Excellent place.
be attempted while we're doing the project. Okay.
It's a good thought, Mr. Norbeck.
Considering what we've done, I feel like a motion is in order to accept the changes that we've
You want to ratify?
ratify and include the 6-foot fence and the no barrier netting and also the calming stations.
All right, Mr. Green would like to offer a motion to ratify the location of the playground, to also
Honor the 6-foot fence.
a 6-foot fence and,
And no barrier netting.
No net or
In other words, back him up.
right, and
Through
also
motion.
to explore traffic calming / traffic hump / bump.
I think it's a great
That
place
is
to
my motion.
experiment.
All right, Mr. Green has moved. Is there a second? Mr. Scott has seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Now,
Opposed? The ayes have it. East End Planning Grant we have covered. Utility upgrade, nothing to report. New business, we have, for informational purposes, the budget calendar.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I'm asking for a special meeting on the 6th and a continued meeting on the 27th. I'd ask council to approve this calendar in the form of a motion.
Which special meetings?
Well, we'll be calling a special meeting on June 6th,
Oh.
2018.
Yes.
And then we'll also be calling a continued town meeting. So with that being said, I'd ask the council to approve the schedule.
Is there a motion to approve the budget calendar for 2018, 2019?
So moved.
Second? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Give Mr. Tucker the second.
Let me ask one thing. Could we not try to complete our budget a little earlier so we don't?
I think we're bound up waiting on electric rates and waiting on,
Electric rates are,
Let's have order.
We June the 27th for the to consider adoption fund, and we are obligated to July 1st.
Well, when we go back and set back with the necessary public hearings, and when we get all the final figures and all, that's where it puts us, Mr. Moncur. I mean, I don't see that you can speed it up any because we're required to have so many public hearings and so many notices, and that's just the fact, the way it goes.
And for the most part, we'll know a month ahead of time.
That's
We
right.
look at very
This is
beginning of
far-
June, We'll have a budget for the most part. We may have some changes amongst the
Yes,
council. but-
yes.
But this, I will say right now, having, as I said earlier, been in these chambers quite a bit, this is about as early as you can do when you've got, I mean, it'll be very public. The Account and Finance Committee meeting will be reviewing a budget on May 2nd. I mean, that's
early for that.
that's good. I mean, that's,
I was more concerned with the last date than I
Well,
was.
based on the fact that we don't have all the final figures until
Right.
approximately the 1st of June, and you have to do public hearings, and you have to run it and notify the public twice, that's the date we came up with.
I would be honest with you, I think it's good for the people and for the council and the staff.
I emailed it to you, I don't know why you fussed in.
Fine, I have a suggestion.
All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries 7-0. Next in your packet, you have a little email from the mayor. Maybe I had not enough to do that day, but I was thinking, we keep calling Rigglesworth Stadium. It is no longer a stadium. The stadium was removed 3 years ago to make way for the 4 ball fields. I just didn't know if council one day would like to give it a new name with a new twist, the Rigglesworth Sports Complex, the Blackstone Recreation Complex, or leave it alone. Just something that came to me one day, and I just want to throw it out there.
I think your idea has,
I'd like to see it left alone.
well, I think your idea has merit, but the question is to me is whether or not we leave the Rigglesworth in or out. And I'd like to leave the Rigglesworth in.
Yes.
So I like Blackstone Recreational Complex. Rigglesworth Recreational Complex.
Can I refer this to the Parks and Recreation?
So,
All right, just like I say, if no action's fine,
I mean, I keep it simple, Rigglesworth Sports Complex. I mean, just,
I will await the committee's recommendation.
I move we change the name to Rigglesworth Sports Complex.
no need to bog it down.
You know,
Second it.
we have a motion on the floor to change the name of the previously known Rigglesworth Stadium to the Rigglesworth Sports Complex. Motion, Mr. Rigglesworth was a long time, many years ago, I want to say back in the 30s, was a superintendent of schools or principal, I think he was a superintendent of schools in Ottawa County. But there's no one from his family that I've been told around. But I
All
can't
you
confirm
Harris's
that.
leave, I still want to leave it Harris Medical Center.
All right, motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? I'll ask for a roll call vote starting with Mr. Tucker. Motion carries 6-0. Change all the station area of Rigglesworth. Next, you have a letter in your packet from Chief Kuzmiak describing the staffing. It's informational. I assume it is, unless you want to make a motion to approve it, Mr. Van Orbeck.
Well, we had some question about when is the police department staff? When can you see a live body? When do you need to use the phone? How do you come in the building? All those kinds of things. Obviously, there's no dispatchers on staff. Chief and I had worked together, and I think that he came up with something, and I certainly endorse it. From 8:30 to 2:30 every day, Stephanie will be working at the front counter. Okay, answering phones and being available at the front window. You can go into the lobby. From 2:30 to 4, if you didn't know, Stephanie only works at 4:30. She's got family obligations, so she doesn't take a lunch break. Stephanie from 2:30 to 4:30 will be back in her office, okay, with the intention that she'll have a ringer or some kind of a buzzer that will alert her to someone coming in. There is a telephone to the outside or to the exterior of the building that will automatically dial to the Nottoway County Sheriff's Department. We had some folks recently that had some, when we had some of these break-ins and things and cars being broken, they were concerned about, how do I get a hold of the town police department now that there's not a dispatch center? I said, well, if it's a crime or something serious, call 911. And it's the same as it always has been. And I think a lot of folks in town had gotten used to using the 292 number to talk to a dispatcher. So I think we need to emphasize to folks, if it's something serious, you need to talk to a police officer, please dial 911. It'll go to the Nottoway County Dispatch Center, the same place it always has gone to.
If you dial the 3322, it still goes to the county book, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
So they can still
The
call.
number still
the
works.
that they
You're still
would-
getting a human being.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a good move this council's made. Thank you for the update, Mr. Van Norbeck. You also are going to update us. Mr. Van Norbeck went to the FOIA seminar.
Well, I was, and I've been to these before, taught by Maria Everett. There wasn't anything groundbreaking, but there was something kind of surprising. One of the items that we, Jennifer and I and the chief who attended learned was that public notice being posted, and there's a part of the state code that does require posting of public notices for certain meetings and certain events and called council meetings, all those sort of things. We do need to do that better. We need to physically post in an area accessible to the public and in an area that's consistently used for the purpose. And the inside corkboard in the town hall, I do not believe is satisfactory because it's closed in the evening. It's our intention that we would like to locate a waterproof exterior notice board outside the clerk's office. Okay, I think that would be compliant, because I don't think we're compliant with the posting of notices, okay? I don't know how many people look at them, but the state code does say you gotta post them. At the same time, I would like to take down the crepe myrtle tree in the front of the town manager's office to create a more open area, one, where it's more lit, and the safe deposit, or the overnight deposit box will be more visible from the street. It's a big crepe myrtle, it's a big boy, it's gotten big, and I think we'll maintain the rest of the landscaping, but I would like to take that down, improve the lighting, and put lighting above the board as well.
Funds available, or you need us to allocate some funds?
No, I think Jennifer has already checked on pricing for the boards, and we're talking $138 for the.
This seems to me, in my humble opinion, that this is just in the normal, everyday.
I agree totally.
Works
Okay.
of the.
But heads up, when you see a crepe myrtle tree going down that I think some folks
I
are
appreciate
like very
that.
much, but it's messy and it.
It is. It does create an element there. The visibility is not good. It's safety, and I do want anyone in the audience. So if you don't want to come by here every day and check the notices, our clerk is great. If you give her email address, you can get on the e-blast, and she's usually 48 to 72 hours notifying of council meetings, committee meetings. I can tell you, we do that better than anybody in Southside Virginia notification. I can tell you that right now. Way better.
Posting them on the doors since your meeting, correct?
Well, I do the yearlies that y'all approve right here in the lobby.
Third
That-
Monday
that
and
is
fourth
there.
Monday, right.
But like the insurance committee meeting, I did post it on the door out here ahead of time so that people would
Be
know.
compliant. Main thing's be
But we
compliant.
need to be consistent in location, according to
I
our
think you
fellow.
got permission to go ahead and do that. That's a great idea.
$100 we can handle.
Absolutely.
Item number 2, and this might be a question, and this is a question I don't have a full answer for. First of all, I've always, 20-some years in government, been under the understanding that if you don't have, and I'm speaking specifically in committees, we have 3-man committees or 3-person committees. If 2 of the council people speak, you're not in violation of FOIA. And we asked this question to Mr. Gerhardt
Alan Gerhardt.
2 times and said, Alan, are you sure? His position is if 2 members of a committee are speaking and they make up a quorum, they are still in violation of FOIA. Okay?
Not at a call committee meeting, but let's say, for
At the-
example, on the street.
On the street, if that is a quorum of a committee, that violates FOIA still. Twice he was asked, twice he said that is the case. Now, I think that's pretty simple, okay? I mean, it's just an erosion of what has been typical, but here's the question I have. I think that was pretty obvious. But with you, the mayor, being a de facto member of every committee,
Officio.
are you a voting member?
No, I'm not.
And then it wouldn't apply with the same standard. If you're not a voting member and you wouldn't be any part of the quorum, then it didn't apply. We couldn't find that, but I think those are things that we've got to do better on.
In other words, for example, if I'm the mayor and Mr. Nash and we bump in the street and talk about a recreation committee coming up, that's going to be on a topic. There's some that may say, well, you're talking about committee business and you're 2 members of a committee, but I would not apply because I'm not a voting member.
You're not a quorum.
But if Mr. Nash and let's say Mr. Scott, who are on recreation, discuss, okay, what we're going to do about tennis courts at Wigglesworth coming up next week, that's going to be a hot issue.
Mr. Gerhardt did not think that was,
tough.
he said that was
I
a,
think it's the stupidest thing to have. Because if people on a committee cannot communicate with one another and talk to have an understanding and a meeting of the minds, the committee is absolutely superfluous. It serves no purpose. If everything you say has to be said in this council, or in designated meeting hall, then, you just will not have a committee. We have small committees because we have a small council. Two people happen to make up a quorum of a three-man body.
And the thing about, I'm gonna surprise Mr. McCure. I'm gonna agree with you on this for this reason.
What that-
Com-
you
com-
surprised
commi-
you agree with me?
Committees, and this is something I have to preach from time to time. Committees have no authority to act. Committees recommend and advise. But the moral of the story is, if it's two elected officials in the same body, I think you have the right to converse privately all you want. It's when the third of you get together and you start talking about kids are fine, sports are fine, spouses are fine, but it's inevitable. Most of us who are political animals, we're usually not far away as town business, and we all have to be careful, this person included, because once you get three, you got to be careful. And that's
Three doesn't bother me, but let me see if I understand this. So Mr. Nash and I can talk about this playground all we want to, but as long as it's not financial. Is that
Well,
right?
no, if y'all,
Is that right?
well, here's the thing, if Mr. Nash, you can talk about the playground committee all day, as long as you're not in the same committee that's discussing it.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's
But-
correct.
But we're both on finance, so if it moves over to the conversation about finance, then we're, you gotta be
And I
kidding.
personally, as a member of the
I mean-
FOIA Council, I think that's a very harsh, strict interpretation. And one thing I'll tell you about the FOIA Council, all we are is an advisory council with opinions. And I think the basic thing we need to, is when three of us are together, let's just keep it on kids, wives, and sports, or
Well, I
whatever.
think we've done a very good
I
job.
think so. Listen, I think so too. And one other thing I'd like to add, and I want to commend the clerk on this, I believe I'm speaking in turn. Y'all did discover at that meeting that when we have closed sessions, you can't just simply say, we're going to discuss surplus, we're going to discuss possible disposition of town real estate. You've got to name the real estate. Unless negotiations are already in effect, we're naming the,
I don't know if it was so specific as that, but you do have to give more detail than personnel matter.
you've got to say personnel garbage department, personnel administration.
Sanitation department or street department.
I've been saying that for
you gotta
years.
give- And you're also supposed to quote the code section.
We've been
We've been
about
doing that.
We've
We've been doing
really-
that.
I think we're the best body in the county.
Personnel.
Yes, because I
Beyond the
print it
county.
for y'all every time that y'all
Yes,
have
you
it.
do.
Yeah,
Code
I-
section, the item that you select, and you have to give some detail.
I commend the staff on your efforts. That was a
think
long
we've been
day. I
doing
can only
good.
imagine it was about 6 hours y'all out there, 3 or 4 hours y'all out there. We'll move on to committee referrals, folks. Y'all gonna laugh me out of here, but before Christmas, we had a pot-bellied pig that showed up in town, and our ordinance in town makes that illegal. And the lady wanted she wanted to keep it in her pen until they could find the owner or get a home for it. I asked the police and animal control to go easy on the ordinance, and they did. But these are just facts. I want y'all to know facts. By law in Blackstone right now, you can own 4 Great Danes or 4 gigantic dogs. You cannot own a 70-pound pot-bellied pig.
No hooves animals.
What's that?
No hooves animals.
Well, it says no swine, no horses unless you're in the RS district. I just would like to ask council, this would be the Health and Orders Committee, does the Health and Orders Committee think that's fair? More and more communities are allowing pot-bellied pigs under a certain weight. If you think it's crazy, then say it's crazy.
Well, we just need to designate it as a companion animal.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Emotional support,
And give it,
right.
and give it an exemption.
This is just more of the same that we went into 8 years ago. How high does a smokestack have to be off the wood burning unit?
Well-
Is 8 feet high enough or 16 and a half? No, I think 12 and 3/4 feet.
Well, your code right now, Mr. McCure, right now in Blackstone, since February 2005, the law of the land in Blackstone has been you may have up to 4 cats and dogs or combination thereof. What I'm just saying is, if I live next to you, almost side to side, and you got 4 Great Danes, the big 120-pound dogs, that can, going back to what Ms. Cole said, if you don't poop or scoop, can create a big-time hassle. Yet we're saying you can do that, and you can even let the dog defecate on your own property and not have to clean it up, but you can't have a 70-pound pot-bellied pig.
That is domesticated.
That's
I would go
domesticated.
as far as adding possibly goats for a limited period of time for cleaning up lots. I mean, we have numerous lots in Blackstone.
I'll be
that are
honest with
overgrown.
you.
Get two goats. You could put 2 goats on a lot for 2 weeks and it's cleaned up perfect.
I don't want a pot-bellied pig, but there are folks that don't
Keep-
want
keep
to brush the
inside.
grip on. That little ankle biter of mine, okay?
Right.
So if it's a companion animal, and here in the last couple of years, I have discovered how important companion animals are to various members of our constituency. I think we ought to give it due diligence and think about it. If it's a companion animal, then we need to make an exception.
I'm gonna refer potbelly pigs and companion animals to the Health and Ordinance Committee for study.
Are we not trying to make a problem which has not presented itself?
It is a problem. There are people, I know people that have pet pigs.
So do I.
Well, I do too.
So,
I've
I
seen
mean,
I just wanted to be some fairness and equality in the ordinance, that's all.
Can you
That's
add
all.
to that possibility of, and it would only be a limited time to just allow it, but say 2 weeks for a goat to be allowed on a premise, caged, not caged, but fenced in. I mean, you can clean up property.
I'm gonna
easily
add
with that.
potbelly pigs and other animals and refer that to the Health and Ordinance Committee for study, recommendation.
If I may, on the committee referrals, Wayman reminded me, and we do have a street committee coming up fairly shortly that we'd like to schedule, so if you're on the street committee, please, we'll be in touch with you fairly shortly to do that. We do have a police and employment committee, I believe on Wednesday, is that correct? And ultimately, I think we'll have another airport committee, but street committee would be the next one, and on the agenda would be the Spring Hill Church Road and the turning lane.
Okay.
So-
And I saw Mr. Michael Bagley, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Yes, sir.
Several years ago, we did a loan credit to Farmville when they were doing their convention center. Now, is that something that we loaned to them, that once they completed their building, that they supposed to give it back? Or is it a one-time thing, we give it to them and it go up in half?
Are you referring to the Burn Building?
No. When Farmville asked us to help them build some hotel or something in Farmville 4 years ago, and we did some loan credit to them or something in that area.
That does not ring a bell,
The
Mr.
only
Bagley.
thing I remember with Farmville, and it's been a while, was when they were putting in that kiosk in the parking lot of Ruby Tuesdays. We were putting flyers in there or something. That's the only thing I remember with Farmville. I don't know if.
I'll find out.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Second thing. We talking about this potbelly and you wanna do something with the town. We're gonna go right back some 2 years ago when we had the problem with Spring Hill and their neighbor with their livestock. I think it's in our charter that there's no livestock
That's correct.
in the corporation limits of Blackstone.
And Mr. Bagley, that you're exactly right, and I commend you on that. But what I would ask council to consider, and I stress the word consider, and I've looked at other towns, towns that have allowed pot-bellied pigs as companion animals in residential zones have had a weight limit. So you wouldn't have, Billy Coleman's got 4 500-pound pigs in his yard. It would, I was concerned about the fairness of the ordinance, but again, this will be a public recommendation. But right now, the ordinance states you can have swine or any type of livestock. You can have up to 4 hen chickens in certain zones with proper setbacks, no roosters. Yes, so I'll refer that to the Health and Ordinance Committee.
What am I supposed to do now? Excuse me.
Nothing, we're gonna have a street committee meeting.
I've got a few things in a mayor's minute, if I may. I've got just 4 issues I want to bring up real quick. I've been asked a lot of questions. I don't want you to divulge anything you're not supposed to. ViewMac. How bad is the damage inside? Do we know what has been our involvement with that building since the pipes burst? That sort of thing. But that's been the question I got all weekend.
I have not been inside the building since it broke loose, but I do have been provided a copy of the video, and the paper was right. There's 18 inches of water in the gym, and it leaked down through the auditorium. It came bursting through the ceiling. I have not been in there since it happened. I don't have access to the building myself. Our guys went in there and found the leak. It had leaked enough that it was causing one of our tanks to drain down, and so we knew it was a big water leak.
Let me just the fire. Walter Mack Osborne was concerned. This is before the cold snap. He said, "Billy, have you thought about does ViewMac have water?" And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know. He was concerned about sprinkler system if there was a fire. Someone broke in and set someone on fire. Was ViewMac during the cold spell? Did they have town water or not?
They do not, but fire sprinklers and fire lines are independent from their service. So they did disconnect their service through the treasurer's office. The meters shut off and that sort of thing. But they have a wet system, and that wet system's never been a problem before. But it was so cold, the fire line, which is independently owned, it's not town's water. It's not metered. When that rascal burst, it was their line, and it had simply frozen that hard.
When they cut the heat up,
No heat. There's been no heat in there since the fire.
Let me ask this again. This is not the town's building. I want to stress that, but But do we know, and I guess I'm asking you, do we happen to know if the people who own the building have gone in there and made any steps to try to, they're trying to desperately sell this building so we're here. Do we know if they made any effort to get the water up and?
I do not. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay,
Nope.
I didn't want to put you on the spot, but I just had,
I
that's,
simply don't know the answer.
that's fine,
Well,
that's
you
fine.
mentioned that it's a wet line that's directly connected to the town without a water meter. Is there a way to, because it happened over here at Lucky Eights as well, so the town's out of that water.
That we don't have a way
Is
to
there any insurance
estimate.
claim that can be done on the town's behalf to recover water costs or whatever?
I guess there could be, but if you think 1,000 gallons of water is $8.
Yeah, but how many gallons are, I mean, if it had 18 inches of water over there,
Just assume 100,000 gallons is 100 times 8, so $800 worth of water.
deductible is 500, so.
So there you go.
But the basketball court is above the auditorium, right?
Correct.
So that water that was in the floor leaked down to the,
Trashed it.
That's their law.
I agree totally. That has been the big issue of concern. I've got two other things for on the mayor's minute. I just found out last week, as many of you did, that FASC, God bless them, they're going to have a big informational fair for their employees on Thursday, February 17th in Summit, West Virginia, which I'm planning to go. And so I'm eager to go, and I'm even saying, come ride with me to West Virginia. And I can run my mouth all day about how great Blackstone is. Do we have anything? I feel like the town, the county, the Chamber of Commerce, DBI, what's our message? Who's going to be our speaker? Are we, I'm trying to find more information from the lady that's in charge, and she's telling me, well, a lot of our employees that day are going to be on training. I'm not sure how many staffers you'll be exposed to.
Can you
I'm
explain
going
as to
on.
why in West Virginia? What's the significance of West Virginia? Is that where they're?
I think that's where a significant amount of that track.
Most of their stuff is.
Yeah.
Right.
I would think, I mean, the chamber got a packet together. I would think we need to go to realtors, ask them for a pamphlet of their houses available. I mean, get anything we can get.
What concerned me was I found out that the county found out about this through, Farmville had been notified about it, and the county had not been notified. But again, I'm going to go, and anybody wants to go with me, but is anything y'all want me to say? But we have brochures. I've been told the chamber does have a brochure. I just think that we got 1
Ms.
month.
Wilson, let her work on getting you some stuff together.
Right.
I certainly approve you doing what you see best. I mean, you're the one that went to Richmond and pitched Main Street, and you were successful on the first try. I think you're well versed, and I think you're the right man to do it. And I appreciate you doing it.
Well, I appreciate the faith y'all have in me. I just want to make sure, I'm going to try to find out more what the format is. I'm a little concerned. I hate to go up there and bump into like 30 employees, but that's the risk you take, and we'll do it, and we'll put our best foot forward. I just want to let you be aware of that. Two other issues, let you go. I've been approached by a citizen who loves this town about the possibility of forming a beautification committee. And as we learned the last few years, the mayor can't just appoint people. Council has to. I was thinking if one member of council, each member of council and the mayor could appoint someone to maybe advise. They would not have any power. They wouldn't bug the town manager and say, hey, Philip, you got to go pick up, but could just point out things to the town staff, public property and private property wise. Hey, that house over there has got 2-foot tall grass, that sort of thing.
Didn't we do this a few years ago? We formed a committee. Jimmy Johnson was on it. And
It hadn't been very active, but
No.
I've got one name, but
Could we do an ad in the paper soliciting those
That's what I was looking
that
for.
are interested? You need a motion for that?
I think a motion would be great.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Green, second by Mr. Scott, seeking volunteers to serve on a all-volunteer beautification committee that work closely with the town on unsightly properties, including town properties. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Very last question. You were kind to come to my Speak Your Mind to the Mayor event in November. Any luck, I know you've been busy, on plastic recycling options?
I can't see any luck. We need to get our stuff moved. My intention is on plastic recycling is to ask the state of Virginia, who has a recycling coordination department, to come make presentation to council and say this is what has worked in the past and what hasn't. I've fooled with it before. My personal opinion is you're going to have to put money into it. You can have a very successful plastic recycling, but it's going to cost money. I don't think there's any doubt it can be done. I don't think there's any doubt that we can buy the equipment. We approached the USDA rural development folks to see if they would provide grant monies for it. But I think it's ultimately going to cost the town contribution. I don't think the materials will provide enough revenue to operate it. The cardboard doesn't. I don't think that the plastic will, and But we can certainly have a recycling program. I just think we need to give you a dollar figure, what it's gonna cost you, and see if you're willing to do it.
Absolutely.
And we-
I'm a little concerned about, I think, due to the fact we don't have, we probably have the highest density population in the whole county in Blackstone. We have the largest town, and we live in close proximity to another. Countywide, it's a loser. I mean, if the county was gonna start picking up plastic on Hungrytown Road and Dusttown Road, it's
It's a loser for us too. It's
I'm
just a
afraid
matter-
it may be, but there-
Well,
the
there's no
citizens
question. It's just a matter of, do we want to allocate taxpayer money to do recycling?
Right.
I'm not saying that I don't.
Right.
But don't go in and
Now
think.
go blind. Don't
I
go-
mean, the city of Bedford does it on a huge scale. So they've got like 48,000 people in their town, and it loses money.
Right.
So we can't scale Blackstone ever to make it self-sufficient. I'm not saying that I'm not interested in doing it, but we need to go in it
Again,
with our eyes wide open.
If we go back to what Ms. Cole was saying earlier, I think we need to be more proactive and, I mean, we're stuck in a county that's sometimes a little stuck in their times. So I'd like to see our governing body
Excuse me.
as being proactive. I mean, no offense, but to be honest, when it comes to 3 poop stations, I mean, what's it hurt to the town of Blackstone? Let's do it. I mean,
I think it shows our citizens, I tell you, at my meeting I had, I think if we just, one thing I'm proud of this council, and I think I've tried to do, is be responsive to those who come to the podium and speak. And I'd hate for the citizens who came to the fire station that night, well, told the mayor about plastic recycling, but no one wants to do it. We want to give it the full due diligence, but it may, Mr. Moncur may be right, it may not be worth touching. But I think we owe it to our people to say, look, we're looking at it and we're trying.
If it were going to make good money, I believe Steps would have participated with us about 3 or 4 years ago when Mr. Eaton was pretty hot and heavy over such things, and they said, we don't want to touch it. You can bring the stuff to us, but it is no good. We can't afford to come get it and make any money with it. All right.
Thank y'all very much. At this time, before we adjourn, there's time for citizen comments. I see Mr. Zachary Whitlow. Mr. Whitlow has the floor, and then Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Whitlow.
Today, Chuck Arnson and I met and we discussed that very topic of sending information and packets to West Virginia with this upcoming informational fair. We are handling that.
Okay.
We have bags that were developed through our marketing leverage program with VTC, brochures, and we'll go around to realtors in the town and we can coordinate to get a package together.
That is wonderful news, and I thank you, Mr. Whitlow. Thank you so much. Will y'all be coming as well to West Virginia?
Undecided.
Okay, well, look, if you want to, I can take 6 people with me. So anybody wants to ride, and we won't talk town business. Mr. Mitchell.
I have to go, that's why I want to get up there first. But what I want to know is, because besides the pig and everything, can I talk about Spring Hill Road?
Yes, sir. This is your time.
I don't understand what I'm supposed to do.
It was referred to a committee.
And what, the committee can notify us when it's ready or something?
The street committee is meeting this Wednesday.
Emails when the committee
Okay, that's one.
meets.
That's all I need to know.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
Happy New Year.
Anyone else who'd like to address council at this time?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Wade Hamner.
I'd like to announce to the council and everyone in my ward and everything, I'm not gonna seek re-election, so I think I ought to publicly announce, be fair for everybody else who would want to run.
Well, that is mighty nice of you. I know that you were recruited when no one qualified in 2014. I will tell you, you've been a good, diligent, humble public servant, and we thank you for your service. I'm sorry to hear that decision, because you got some years left of service, but we respect your decision. I'd like to ask everybody to join me in giving Wade Hamner a round of applause. You really have been a quiet, good warrior, and we appreciate that. Anyone else want to take the floor to make any announcements? Hearing none, I'll adjourn the meeting at 9:06.
I got smoked, Isle of Wight smoked me tonight.
Really?
Yeah.
You played on, well, it happens, man.
Yeah, Danny Christian played so early, I had to